couldn't catch me. That was sensational. It only has, I think, 317 foot-pounds of torque and 435 horsepower, which isn't outrageous in today's terms, but it's the delivery from this engine, normally aspirated, just wow, the minute you want it, 2,000 revs onwards. I think as you could see on the way up, I was only using first and second gear, but the car is so responsive. I mean, it's instantaneous. There's a synchronicity between you as the driver and the machine you're driving, which is all you want. You want complete interpretation of what your desires are as a driver and what the car can offer you. And many people in the past were a little fearful of a rear engine 911. Those days are gone. Even with the, the traction control and stability control off, every single movement of the car was fantastic. And those brakes, I mean, they're huge, big Brembos, but the smell from them was like glorious. It's like the smell of a fresh fried breakfast when you're hungry. The smell of burning brakes. Now it's time for us to carry on the road to Monterey. What a fabulous drive up I had, and now we're here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. And what I've really got the gist of on the way up in the GT3 is it is an extraordinarily fast yet very compliant road car. I can't almost imagine any version of it going faster, but it does, and it's in here, along with a driver that Porsche are respectful enough that they've made him their only factory driver here in the States, Patrick Long. Let's go and check him out and the car. Patrick.
What's up, man?
Nice to see you, mate.
Good to see you. How's everything?
Great. I've actually, as you know, had the most amazing road trip up in the GT3, and
yeah, the cop's called.
The GT3 is a road-going Porsche, but with such strong DNA to racing. In your eyes, what is the biggest synergy between the two of them?
80% of that car out there is what we're racing.
Wow.
We have to homologate through the ACO for the Le Mans rules with the road car. So if we need a little bit more displacement, or we need a little bit more wheelbase, or we need different pickup points, we've got to do it on the road version first before they'll let us do it on the race car.
Now, looking at this, I mean, when you take it, it's obviously lighter weight. How much lighter weight?
We're taking more weight out every week. We're down, I'm going to say roughly 30%. Surely weight, as you mentioned, horsepower, gearbox, brakes, things like that are different. But the main piece here starts out as a road-going 911. The car makes its power at a high rev rate, so you can just twist the hell out of the car. I mean, you can literally, you can just go through the roads and just buzz up through the gears. A lot of cars fall flat on their face halfway through the rev range. That's something that we pride ourselves in, is a car that runs up to 8,000 RPM, that you're just whining the hell out of it, and that's really cool because it's making the torque down low, but you can run it all the way up through the gears.
Yeah, and also I think the harmonics of the exhaust, that is outrageous. I guess at about 4,000 or 5,000 revs, the sound goes nuts, which means you want to give it more.
Exactly, and I think that's what it is. I mean, I'm like you, I'm just a little kid in a man's body who wants to go out and freaking run hard. And it's the sound, it's the vibration, it's the feel, it's the brakes, it's what you're getting from it. It's not the numbers that you read in the magazine.
One thing that obviously on the road, I love that adjustable front for the parking lots and stuff.
We do have these dive planes, so we're making the aero a lot like the big splitter on the GT3, but we're doing it different ways, and it's actually a little bit
recessed in because the drop point on the...
Correct. Through the regulations, they don't want anything extending out past the front, but actually we figured out ways to sort of manipulate what the rule book says, not illegally, but we're just looking for loopholes to get everything we can out of the aerodynamics, because as we know, there's mechanical grip and there's aero grip, and we all want aero grip. There's a trade-off between running air through the car and running air underneath or over the top. So obviously the more air we open up into the car, we're getting cooling, we're getting efficiency from the engine and the brakes, but we're losing aerodynamic downforce. So it's always a balance. We're always balancing that line between being up to temperature but being aerodynamically efficient. It's tough. The driver always wants to go quicker, more grip, more horsepower. The engineers always want to make sure we get to the end of a 24-hour race.
Yeah, just to clarify, race teams don't cheat. What they do is they get the rule book and they stretch it.
That's right.
In every direction, and Porsche aren't alone in that. That's what everyone does. Tire technology, Michelin are your partner. I mean, that's the big gain as well, isn't it, from road to race?
Yeah, absolutely. When you get a slick tire, I mean, this is our transport tire, which is a rain tire, but when you get a slick tire that we use in the race, that's where you're picking up astronomical amounts of grip compared to what you run on a DOT tire. But even the Pilot Cup Sport that you were on is kind of a hybrid slick, so it's a good car. The center lock wheel is obviously for speed, one lug nut on and off, but the tire is everything. That's where we spend so much time in the off season with the engineers. Medium versus soft versus an option tire. Sometimes we're mixing and matching casing, construction, compound. So you might have 180 different combinations when you take one of each and try to mold them together. From the back, you will see the difference between a 911 C2 going to a GT3. It's getting wider every single time, and that's because we're getting a little bit more aggressive. But again, we go back to that aero trade-off. The wider we get, the bigger hole we're making in the air. We're making more grip because we got bigger tires, but are we slowing ourselves down? At Le Mans or Daytona, we oftentimes talk about running narrower.
I bet, that's interesting. We're going to take a look at the engine now. You've got huge airbox here. Old 911s, you know, the engines literally were probably closer to the skin of the car because of dynamics.
Sure.
And you've got it really as far low and far forward as you can, and it's in here. It's in the
without
trunk.
taking the rear seats away from
Yeah.
it. We do have the engine always as low and forward as we are allowed to by the regulations. But also we want to stick true to what a 911 has always been since its inception. It's been a rear engine car. We're not trying to be a mid-engine car. We're not trying to be a front engine car. So with that, it's still tradition here. And as they say, all the magic happens in the back.
Everyone loves numbers. What kind of horsepower would this produce?
450.
Okay.
We're pretty close to what you drove up here
Wow.
in. Obviously, like we talked about before, it's the weight. When we take weight out, we're gaining acceleration in that sense. But also the chassis dynamics, how we're doing our weight distribution, things like that are really where we're focusing on making the lap time. Everything inside the car is lighter, but we've still got to get through a 24-hour race.
Yeah.
The engines that we run in the sprint races compared to the 24-hour races are alike. That's what we pride ourselves at Porsche. If you look back through our success in sports car racing, a lot of it is reliability. Getting to the end of a 24-hour race, we might not have been leading the race in qualifying or in the first hour, but we're always there at the end, and that's cool for me as a driver because I'm getting into these long endurance races. I know that I'm not extending myself for 18 hours and for only the thing to blow up. You know what I mean?
Have they got more cooling in there now for you?
Yeah, we're regulated by the ACO, which is our sanctioning body, to have air conditioning. It's on a thermostat, so it's not just running and we're cruising down the road, but I think it's 30 degrees Celsius is where they're trying to keep us from not getting above. We've got a cool box system that runs cold water through a shirt that we have underneath our race suit, but it's pretty minimal, as you said. We've got a fire extinguisher. Sequential box, 6 speeds, not like a Tiptronic or a PDK. It's direct, fixed link, dog cut gears.
I like that though.
It gets up and goes. I mean, you've got a flat shift, so you keep your foot flat on the floor. There's a little trigger of an ignition cut, and boom, you're into the next gear.
It's brilliant. Well, Patrick, thank you for showing us your race car. I think anyone watching this at home will understand that he's a very lucky man, obviously highly thought of to be America's only factory Porsche driver. And I think it's really proved to me that the synergy and the relationship, the DNA between the road car and the race car with Porsche is so tight.
The evolution is becoming closer and closer. Every year, I think in a few years, you're going to have a very, very similar car to this on the road, which is kind of scary to think of.
Very scary, but very exciting. For Jay Leno's Garage, it's Justin Bell and Patrick Long. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, man.
Brilliant. Great.
Thanks.
Ultimate Blogs rocks.